Hi, my name's Lauren. I've been making candles for over 15 years, both as a professional and an at-home candle maker, and both ways are a blast. Each time I've learned something new. There's tons of tricks and shortcuts that can save you time and money, and the following information is going to really help you get started making candles in the right way. I'm going to make sure that you have the right equipment, I'm going to make sure that you know the important things about safety, and most importantly, I'm going to show you how to make some really fun projects that can turn into great gifts. So let's get started. So before we can get going on making chunk candles, we actually need to make the chunk wax to make the chunk candles. So I have a pour pot here that I've colored with wax, and now I'm going to stir it vigorously just to make sure it's really well blended. And we are pouring purple today. Excellent, that feels good. Now I have a ring that I use to pour in. This reduces the amount of splash and mess. It's not necessary for pouring, but it's really handy. It keeps it nice and neat. Once you're finished pouring, you're going to want to just lift your ring and place in your pot. This is going to take about 30 to 45 minutes to cool. Once your wax has cooled, it's going to be ready to cut. And the way that you can tell that it's ready to cut is that there's a very dark color variation along the outside of your candle. When you press on the wax, it's a little bit stiff. So you don't want it so hard that you can't cut it, but you don't want it so soft that it goes when you do it. And that's a technical term. So make sure that you keep waiting until you get that nice dark circle and you can't push down on it too much. So then you're ready to do your cutting. Now I'm going to leave a little bit of extra space so that I can do some specialty shapes. And the easy way to do specialty shapes is just to place and push down. And pull up. You want to make sure that you use as much of the space as you can so that you don't have a lot of waste, because you're going to have to reuse this waste around the shapes. And the way that you can do that is to remelt it and pour it back into chunk trays. So all the wax can be used, it's just going to take a couple times. So I'm going to keep cutting, and this tray is ready to go. So we've cut our chunks on this tray so that it's ready to go. And the way that you empty it is fairly straightforward. Flip it upside down and dump it out. Once you do that, you're ready to break them up and put them in a color bucket. You can put them in a bag, you can put them in a basket. I have different color buckets. I make my chunks at least a couple days before. It's a great rainy day activity, and so that way when people come to make candles, you're ready to rock and roll, and you don't have to stop and make chunks before anybody makes a candle. So keeping some chunks on hand is a really easy way to have candle making ready to go at your whim. So now we've made our chunks and we're ready to actually build our chunk candles. So let's get started. I like them to see finished products so that they can see what they're getting into. If you look at the flat-sided candles, you can see they have a much bolder, poppier, chunkier look. You can see a lot of the chunks and a lot of the shapes. So if you want a bold, blocky look, a flat-sided candle is definitely the way to go. When you look at the rounded candle, you can see it's much softer and more muted. The wax that we pour over the chunks has covered them and just made them a little bit softer. You can see on this filled mold, after you get your mold filled with chunks, you're going to pour hot liquid wax over this project. That hot liquid wax is actually going to bind your candle together, and it's also going to hold your fragrance, so you definitely want to leave room. It's also going to cover any chunk that's not flat against the side, so it's important when you're building your candle to consider all of these things. So if you want a soft candle, choose a rounded mold. If you want a bright, bold, blocky candle, choose a square mold. Today, we are going to use a square mold because I want to show you how to build with embellishments and specialty shapes. If you're building a round candle, because the wax covers the sides, you're not going to see any of those fun shapes unless you put them on the top. So let's get building on your candle. So we're going to start with an empty mold, and we're going to grab some chunks out of our bin, and we're going to use our putty knife to cut them. It's 2 hands on the handle, downward pressure, and rock back and forth. The downward pressure is just as important as the rocking, and the rocking is just as important as the downward pressure. You want to make sure as you're chunking that no piece smaller than a sugar cube goes inside your candle. And this goes back to the wax. If you put small fragments and shavings inside your candle, it'll clog it and won't allow the hot wax to get all the way through. You definitely want to leave room, so make sure no piece smaller than a sugar cube goes inside your candle. So we're ready to build. I've got some extra chunks here. And this is kind of a fun chunk. This is the reverse. We did some specialty shapes out of this, and this is extra. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just trim it a little bit and add it to the base of my candle. I'm going to take the wick out and I'm going to thread it down inside here. Then I'm going to re-wick it and start building with my chunks. I'm just going to throw some chunks in there using a chopstick to help maneuver those pieces into place. I want to make sure that I'm getting lots of color up against the sides, so I'm putting as many chunks against the side as I can. You'll need to fill the middle of the mold as well, but you don't have to be as persnickety. Now I'd like to use some fun specialty shapes today, so I'm going to use these little daisies. I'm just going to slide it right in. Now if I use the heart, I have to remember that I'm building my candle upside down. So when a candle comes out, this is the top. So I want to put my heart in upside down, so when the candle comes out, it's right side up. So we're going to do just that. I'm going to put it over here. I'm going to put it flat against the side, and I'm going to just put another chunk in to give it some support and continue to build. Putting another specialty shape in and just continuing to build. Now I like my molds really bright, and so I'm doing a lot of work to make sure that they stay nice and flat against the side. Give some support. And once again, the middle isn't as crucial as the sides. You just want to fill it a little bit to give your other chunks some support. So we're ready to go. We've filled our mold and we're ready to pour some hot wax. So getting the right amount of wax for your chunk candle can be tricky because every candle is different and everybody chunks different. So the amount of wax you're going to need depends on the person and how much chunk wax they put in already. So here we go. I've got my chunk wax that I'm going to pour in. I'm going to add some fragrance. And once again, this is about 1.5 pounds candle, and I'm going to scent this wax as if it was 1.5 pounds, so that when this wax melts with the chunks I've already poured into the candle, it'll blend really nicely and have the right scent saturation. It won't be weak. Alrighty. So once again, I'm going to pour over, and I'm going to make sure to go all around the mold to get that hot wax all the way down to the bottom. There you go. Empty pour pot. Now remember, this is the bottom of your candle. At this point, you're going to just allow it to cool. Once the candle cools, to allow a nice solid white opaque top, you can put it in a cool bath and reduce the cool time by half. If you leave it out like this, it's about 3 hours. If you put it in a cool bath, it's about an hour, hour and a half. So let's pour our next candle, and we're going to tint the wax on this candle. As you're doing chunk candles, I usually do white over pour, but you can always add color. This is a great example. This is a great example of an orange over pour on brown chunks. This is a blue over pour on red chunks. Somebody had a blue broken heart. So you can have fun. You don't just have to do white, you can do all kinds of colors. So let's go get some wax. So for this candle, I've tinted the wax blue to give a nice fun blue over pour. And here we go. Want to fill just to the top. If you have a 3x7 or taller candle, you're definitely going to want to do a little bit of pressing down on the chunks to pull those air bubbles up. On a short candle like this, it's really not necessary, but on big, tall guys, you're going to want to make sure that you press down and get those air bubbles out. Now, single pour candles require you to do another pour on top. Because you've used so much hard wax already, you're not going to lose as much volume. So doing a pour on top is not going to be necessary. These candles are pretty much done with the exception of finishing. So there you go. Chunk candles, easy peasy lemon squeezy. Fun for kids of all ages, from 2 to 92.